Remember this? I will try and get into contact with a manufacturer who makes mechanical keyboards for around 25 to 30 pounds, but I'm not going to expect much from that. Well, I guess you finally get to see that video after all. Greetings everyone, my name is Proto, and in today's video I'll be going over the Mantistek GK2, which is essentially a glorified cheap mechanical keyboard. I say cheap because you can find these for less than £50, compared to Corsair's £150 K70, or Razer's £120 Black Widow Chroma. And yes, you can find ones like the Strafe and other keyboards with genuine cherry switches for less than 100, though there's always a compromise, be it lack of programmability, backlighting, and more. In this video you'll see a full review as well as how it's been holding up over the past month. Enjoy. Now before I actually get into it, I do want to mention that this keyboard was sent to me for free in exchange for a review. I also do get to keep it afterwards. That said, they haven't influenced me to say anything nice, nor would you ever see me sugarcoat any of that bullshit on her anyway. Just know this review is entirely my own opinion and hasn't been swayed one bit. Trust me, my integrity is much more important than a free product. Now on the product box we get a very simplistic design, a brown box with the company logo on the front, side and bottom. The top gives us a good look at what to consider in regards to the main features, and lastly the back gives us a look at the keyboard layout and the specifications. The keyboard I received came with brown switches. Now opening the box, the first thing we see is a start guide. The first side is pretty useless with a couple grammatical errors. It doesn't really bother me nearly as much as the software, and the other side of this leaflet does show a diagram displaying what all the different function combinations do. Next we'll remove the keyboard from its foam packaging. As for the keyboard itself, we can get an idea of its layout with its 104 mechanical keys that are built into the chassis. So I've broken this thing up the same as in my other reviews, being ergonomics, build quality, key switches, design features, software, and then finally a summary. Starting with ergonomics, it's very similar to that of the Black Widow Chroma, in that it's like any other keyboard that doesn't include a wrist rest, which at this price I can excuse, it's fine. The keyboard layout is an ANSI one, so for all of those of you from the UK, I either suggest getting used to it or consider going with another option. For me it's fine since my MSI laptop also has the same US layout, it's just something to be wary of. Basically, it feels great as a mechanical keyboard, though I do highly recommend you get a wrist rest. Not only because it will improve your typing experience massively, but because it will also reduce that fatigue or cramps that you may get if you use it for extended periods of time. And unlike other keyboards, the distance between the bottom row of the keys and the end of the keyboard is small enough to make the wrist rest option viable. And the build quality is surprisingly good for a keyboard of this price. It has zero flex, most likely due to its metal plate, though it should be noted that the majority of the keyboard is plastic. This plastic isn't as good as ones you find in more premium products, but it isn't exactly thin either. You'll also find 2 feet on the top of the keyboard, which once extended raises the keyboard. There's also full rubber pads on each corner to keep the keyboard from slipping. There's no braided cable, but rather a rubber plastic one, which is 1.8 meters in length. The keycaps are made of ABS, with them being double shot injection molded. So pretty good. Most of the keycaps that you find on mechanical keyboards are ABS by the way, and I can comfortably say that they still feel great compared to the more expensive PBT keycaps. Now onto the switches. This is perhaps the most important part of the keyboard. I'll go over the most common types of switches first, using a key switch tester that Banggood sent me. That was upon my request. If you plan on buying a mechanical keyboard, I highly suggest you pick one up. Even if it's one of the more basic ones with just 4 different keys, it's still worth it, since they are really cheap and you won't have to end up returning the keyboard just because you figured out that you don't like those switches. This one features Cherry MX Clear, Grey White, Linear Grey, Green, Black, Red, Blue and finally brown switches, which give you an idea of how they sound, feel and the actuation force that's required for them. Since most of the common switches within mechanical keyboards, for gaming at least, sold today are the reds, blues and browns, these are the ones that I'll be going over. Now, the Cherry MX Reds are linear switches, having the simplest operation, moving straight up and down without any additional tactile feedback or loud clicking noises. They sound like this. Now, the browns are my personal favourite. If you press the key down, there is a noticeable bump which lets you know that the key has been pressed and is registered. There's also a noticeable sound too, and they sound like this. And lastly, of the 3 of them, there's the blue switch, which have a more pronounced tactile bump, which is great when you're typing. They're also pretty loud, and this is what they sound like. As for the switches in this keyboard, they're Gayo brown switches from Outemu, but they're just as tactile as the Cherry MX browns with a couple of differences. Now, although they both have a tactile bump, the feel to them is a little bit different. To me, the Gayo switches bump seems to be more noticeable, but also flatter. As for the actuation distance, they feel only slightly heavier than the Cherry MX browns, but not as much as the Razor Green, so probably about 55mg of force, though I assume it varies. For actuation distance, it's probably about the same, but actuation distance does feel slightly higher. And for sound, the Cherry MX browns are louder and springier sounding. That said, the Gayo switches are deeper in tone, quieter, and sound less springy. Comparisons now. Overall, the switches certainly aren't bad and they are rated for 50 million clicks, like Cherry, though I'm not sure whether to believe that statement or not, since it's not really something I can test. Onto the design of the keyboard. Put simply, it looks sleek and elegant. The black keycaps look good, though like the ones in the Black Widow Chroma, I have to criticize it for its gamery font, which makes the keyboard look a lot less pro-grade. It's not as bad as the Black Widow though, since at least capitalization is actually standard across the board here. The front plate looks good though, with the screw showing being a nice addition. It reminds me very much of the Corsair open keyboard designs or the new Black Widow Chroma X keyboard. It's relatively easy to clean, and the keys almost look like they're hovering. The keycap housing is also transparent with the RGB LED hidden below that, meaning that as it shines through, the lighting is going to be very even. There's also lights for the num lock, caps lock, scroll lock, and indication, though unfortunately these are all different colours, which if you're going for a single colour design, isn't that great. In regards to features, it's not bad either. It has NKRO, which is N key rollover, and that means that you can press all the keys simultaneously and they'll all be registered at the same time. Now in practice, you can push WA to strafe and then press G at the same time to throw a grenade or something, with all of these inputs registered at the same time. And for gaming, this is essential, though for the record you don't need full key rollover, but there is a huge benefit to having a certain amount at least. And another feature is the RGB backlighting. Each key is individually backlit and the brightness of them is great. You can adjust this using the function key, though I'd say it's just about as bright as the Black Widow, which is excellent. In terms of lighting, you can also change these to several select presets using the function keys. I'll just give you a quick rundown of them. Now, you have static, breathing, then rainbow, then shockwave, followed by fading lights, then ray, snake, sea, and finally raindrop. This keyboard is also programmable if you do use software from the store page. I do have a problem with it though, and that's if you press the function key and the backspace key at the same time, the lighting reacts based on external noise, looking a lot like an equalizer-esque design. And with that in mind, it gives us an indication that there's a mic on the keyboard. And it's not one that's visible. It's not mentioned in the product description either, which is pretty annoying. Taking off the spacebar, you can quite clearly see this little electronic component, which once tapped, makes the lights go insane. Evidently, this is the mic. Now, carefully ripping it out solved this problem, and the keyboard still works just as well as before. Now, it may be me with my tinfoil hat, but having a mic on a keyboard is not something I trust the freedom of. And now for the software. It's a very basic, very limited software, but it works. In the settings, you can restore factory defaults and change the language. Now, restore factory defaults doesn't delete the profiles, macros, lighting, nor the skin, so I'm not actually sure what it does. Besides that, you can change the skins to 9 different types, which I'll quickly give you a rundown of them. In the statistics tab, you can track how many times you press a key, which, in my opinion, is very pointless. In the macro tab, you can import and export your macros and create new ones. For sake of example, I'll create a macro which will type hello every time I tell it to. It's very simple, but again, it works. In light effect, it's a little disappointing. Whilst the keys are individually backlit, changing the color using the software means that it applies it to the entire keyboard. There's no way to change each individual one. It is very simple though. In the custom tab, you can select any key and apply a keyboard and mouse remap, media and shortcut action, as well as a macro, and you can also disable it. This is great. There's a lot you can do with this. You can create more than one profile as well. And now, here is where the gripes start. As mentioned, you can create multiple profiles, but you can't rename them. Great. Also, once a remap is created, the only way to revert that is to delete the profile or remap it to its original function. Macros also have a cooldown, meaning they can't be spammed that easily, and there's no way to see the full name of the profile in the panel section. There's also some language bugs and a couple of spelling and grammatical errors, and one translation mistake is that the application button at the bottom right actually means apply. Here's the real kicker though, upon installing the software and starting it, it uploads data to a single IP address, about 365 kilobytes. I managed to find the IP address and how much I sent through Glasswire, but cross-referencing that IP address using an online IP tracker, the IP in question belongs to Alibaba.com, which is an e-commerce company, at least according to Google. Now I do know of them since they're not exactly a small company, though I do find this really strange. I don't need to sign in anywhere in order to use it, so what are they uploading, you know? To solve it, simply don't install the program, make do with the uploaded data, or just block it in a firewall, even though I doubt there's anything bad. Now for the pros and cons. For the pros, it's mechanical and the brown keys feel a lot better over the common rubber dome switches. It's also relatively cheap compared to the features that you get. It's got RGB backlighting and a front metal plate, making it look very slick. The keycaps themselves are really nice and it's fully programmable. As well as that, it allows macro recording, and lastly is NKRO. As for the cons, now the switches aren't go away, and whilst I can't disprove their claims about expectancy, I doubt they go through the same quality control checks as Cherry, especially when their keys are much cheaper. For a little more, you can get boards with Cherry keys, though I just want to mention that these aren't bad. Next is software bugs, though you can just use auto hotkey if you want more extensive macro and remap functionality. As well as that, the uploaded data and microphone security concerns don't help this case either. Then we've also got the fact that in this software you can change the lighting for only the keyboard as a whole and not individually, which is a bummer. Anyway, hopefully this review did give you an idea on whether this keyboard is right for you. Now I know it was on the longer side of things, and that's because I wanted to properly review it and explain my reasons behind each decision and feature rather than just skimp over it like some of the other ones. If you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more tech reviews. Also, hit me up on Twitter. Thanks for watching, and until next week, adios!
Back from the dead.